get a lot of questions, and today we're going to answer 10 of the best. When we're done, I promise everyone you will be a better colorist. If you had one piece of advice to give, what would that be?
This is easy. Buy good books. When I first started in coloring, I would buy anything and everything. If it had a cute picture on it, I was right on it. I wanted to own it. As I started to evolve in the hobby through trial and error, I really became picky about what I was purchasing. Some of the lesser quality books cost between $5 and $7, maybe $9. Then I started discovering some of the better quality books were only $10, $12, $15. Do your research. The difference is only the price of a cup of coffee and a donut. You can spend just a few more dollars. Look for the artist edition of that book. That's always the better quality. Look for the spiral bound. That usually has thicker pages that you can tear out. You will be much happier in the end.
What is the best place on a page to start coloring?
I know this answer because I made so many mistakes. My best tip to you is always start with the face or the focal point on the page. Because if you mess up the face and have everything else done, that picture is not going to be your favorite. If you start with the face, and the face, which is usually the hardest, comes out really beautiful, you know that picture really can't go downhill from there. The rest is easy. I broke my rule with this one, and I started with the background, and as you can see, the face came out a little bit lumpy, or the shading on it was off, and that's because I had originally done her as a Caucasian, and then at the end changed my mind.
What are your favorite pencils?
I originally started with Prismacolor, and that was great, and I used the Prismacolor for a very long time. As I started to evolve and move on and bought other pencil sets, I realized they react differently with the paper. And because they react differently with the paper, I was able to get different effects using different pencil sets. Not all pencils are the same. There's a big difference between the wax and the oil, so I would say experiment. And my favorite still would be the Prismacolor.
Where do you get your color inspirations?
I go straight over to Instagram. I don't copy anybody's pictures. I would never follow along and do a picture that's identical to me. That would be boring. I like to use my own imagination. But sometimes I do get stuck for a new color combination or something that will make my pictures a little bit different. And over on Instagram, they have something called Saved. It took me a while to even find that little area. And what I do is I save all the pictures that I love. Now you can see there's a shot of my saved folder. And in there, I just have pictures that I love. Pictures that if I get stuck on a color combination here for a flower, I can always go back. Now, I happen to love this artist, Colorful Peta. I suggest following her. She's magnificent. And while I wouldn't do this picture in those colors, I may use a different picture and then look back and say, wow, her shading on this one would match what I need, or her color scheme is different. I haven't used those pencils in a long time, and that's where I get my inspirations from. Google is another place that you can go, and even Pinterest.
How do you fix wax bloom?
Wax bloom drove me nuts when I first started because I didn't know what it was. And what happens with wax bloom is the pigment is heavier than the wax and it falls down. So you get that waxy surface on your paper. It's very easy to fix. First, change your technique. Lighten up your layers. Use multiple layers. That gives you multiple layers of pigment so that the wax does not come through. This is another one. I clear coat my pictures. That's sometimes why you see my end results being brighter, and that's because I put a clear coat on it. What it does is it sort of magnifies the pigment, and that works.
How do you know where to put your highlights?
Highlights are dependent upon where your lighting source is coming. So if it's coming from the right or it's coming from the left, will determine where the light strikes. You put your highlights wherever the area is most prominent. The easiest way at the beginning to do it is just go to Google a picture of a female face that's sort of looking in the direction that your picture is looking in, and look at the highlights there. They're very prominent. If you have to draw a line around them, a very light pencil line, and you know that those are the areas that you can't touch heavily with the pigment.
Which blenders do you use?
Even though I own blenders, I don't normally use them. I think I've bought one of each type and they're barely touched. That's a picture of my blenders, my original blenders, and I don't use them. Where they do help is a lot with backgrounds. If you have a large open space, sometimes using a blender marker makes it a little smoother, or right near the hard line, which is the edge, right below it.
Even though I follow your tutorial step by step and I use all the same colors, why doesn't my pictures look just like yours?
Even identical twins are different. My hand is heavier, my layers are lighter, they may be thicker than yours. You really can't tell. Now here is the Thomas Kincaid book, and as you can see I was following along with his, even though his is in oil and mine was in pencil. I didn't finish that picture. It began to bore me just because I don't like following other people's colors, but I just did it as a challenge. You're never going to get the same. Also, how heavy one layer is versus another. You may start with a yellow, and I started with a green. That's why. So develop your own technique.
How long does it take to finish a picture?
A picture that I care about can take 10 to 12 hours over the course of several days. As you can see, I use hyperlapse and I do a lot of editing, so it's very hard to do a real follow-through unless I divide it up into 3, 4, 5, 4-hour segments.
Does Puff really sit with you while you color?
Yeah, he really does. But I have 2 desks and they're sort of at an L. Puff sits on a perch or a wooden log, I guess, under a heat lamp. And he'll sit there for hours. He doesn't mind, and he likes to be out of the cage. Puff is only about 8 months old, and he's a big boy. He's grown so much. I've had him since he was almost a newborn. And yes, he does go outside with me and in my car.
If you like what you saw and you want to see more, stick around. Hit that like and subscribe. Here's our latest paint pour.